I'm a child of the 80s, but I'm also a metal chick. So in terms of cartoons, I'm a lot more Metalocalypse than I am the Smurfs. So last year, when I sat down to watch Go Lion, which is the Japanese version of Voltron, I didn't have any expectations. I had never watched Voltron and had not seen much in the way of anime. I was in for a complete shock. This show blew me away with the story arc, epic scale, and, I'll say it, sheer brutality. I was instantly in love. I knew I had to have a transforming Go Lion. So I went online, I did the research, and I found out the only one worth having is the masterpiece Voltron. Not only is it a work of art in and of itself, and a near perfect imagining of the robot, it is a beautiful homage to the 1984 Matchbox Voltron, the first Voltron toy to hit American shores. Naturally, I hit the internet to read and watch reviews of what others had to say about this awesome piece. I was pretty surprised by what I found. There were barely any videos to speak of focusing on the diecast model, and those that did were not complimentary. The biggest complaints? He's too heavy. His legs clink together when you lift him up. They didn't use enough metal. He doesn't come with all the cool weapons and missile launchers from the show. He's unbalanced and falls over at the hips. Black Lion is not as cool looking. His front legs are too skinny. With multiple transformations, the paint scratches and Red Lion's head becomes loose. Due to these alleged shortcomings, most reviewers recommended getting the plastic version of this, which was much cheaper, or just getting another version altogether. Huh? Remember earlier when I mentioned that this toy is an homage to the 1984 Matchbox release? That toy was a US release of the Japanese Popey Go Lion toy, a Japanese toy that was made out of metal. Toys called Chogokin in Japan. The original and real thing can only be made out of metal. The 84 release in the US was also die-cast, but was stripped of all the potentially dangerous firing weapons possessed by its Japanese counterpart. It was marketed to children and sold in toy stores under the name Voltron. Flash forward 21 years to 2005. Toynami designs and releases the super detailed and amazingly articulated masterpiece Voltron. When you place the two side by side, it's easy to see what Toynami had in mind. An update on the Matchbox classic that kids 20 years before had coveted. Maybe they were able to afford all 5 lions back then, maybe not. But now they were in their 30s, and nostalgia was at a premium. Toynami's Voltron was limited to 15,000 and was sold primarily online to adults looking for collectibles. Unlike his predecessor, he was not chunky and compact so much as he was graceful and animation accurate. I'd like to address some criticisms about this piece because I think there are some key misunderstandings. He's too heavy. His legs clink together when you lift him up. They didn't use enough metal. Look, the toy is metal. Metal is heavy, more so than plastic. Perhaps you should lift some weights or start lifting more than your computer mouse. I think you'll find it's not that heavy. And if you have any concept of physics, you'll know that 2 bottom-heavy pieces of metal will cling together when you lift them. To avoid this, use some dexterity, if you have any. It's too heavy, yet you want more metal. Make up your mind, man. There's no way the thing could stand, let alone transform, without the slight give that plastic provides at the joints. It's basic engineering. He doesn't come with all the cool weapons and missile launchers from the show. This robot is modeled after this robot. Notice the similarity? He's not modeled after the original Popey with all the cool weapons. If you want that, you should seek out an original, or the Bandai US export, or a Lionbot. Furthermore, that's not the purpose of this product. I'll get to that in a moment. He's unbalanced and falls over at the hips. This is actually somewhat valid, and it is rumored that Toynami redesigned the piece to be more secure. Thus, if you're looking to buy one, you'll want to look for one later in the run, preferably within the last 4,000. Black Lion is not as cool looking. His front legs are too skinny. Well, what can I say? In order to achieve greater elegance and posability, they made the lion legs, and many of the features in general, finer and less beefy. That ultimately leads to an overall better-looking robot, but the cats are not quite as formidable. Honestly though, are you going to buy this guy and display him as the lions? I don't think so. With multiple transformations, the paint scratches and Red Lion's head becomes loose. This is the bottom line, folks. This is not a toy. This wasn't sold at Toys R Us, and it wasn't priced for 8-year-olds. It was priced for the 8-year-old within, the one who has a Visa card and can afford the $450 price tag. So if you're taking this piece of sculpture and getting down on the floor with it and playing with it like a little kid, transforming it back and forth between lion and robot, then you deserve it if it breaks. If you want a toy that you or your kids can actually sit on the floor and play with, combine back and forth from the lions into the robot, and generally tear to shreds like most kids seem to do with their toys from when we were kids, then you really need the plastic. And maybe some floor mats. If you're looking for a display piece because you think the robot is killer looking, you have somewhere great to showcase him, and you aren't planning to have him battle your Rancor monster, I recommend the die-cast. Because he's awesome. And because he's metal.